And I'm Chili.
And that's Kelon, and that's Guy, and that's Guy. So
yeah, get ready for some guy on guy action. Wait,
no. This you got it all wrong. It's guy on guy on guy on guy action.
That is
Okay.
hilarious.
That's
even
how
better.
That works, right?
Even better.
Yeah, that's how we do that. Anyway, welcome everybody to this, which is a very, very special live recording of Here's Guide to Asgartha, because we are doing a very, very, very early. I don't even know what we want to call. Do we want to call this like meta predictions or like meta trends that we've been seeing? I don't know. What do you guys want to call this?
Yeah, I just like calling it the meta. This is our tier meta. Basically, we're tiering the meta as we currently see it. Now that the new cards have come on board, of course, there's going to be some changes. Of course, there's going to be an errata of some kind or some changes that occurred during the mid-season patch. But this is as we see it today in preparation for Worlds, which is happening this weekend. Tristan, Kelon guy, you're going.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'm excited about it.
And you're going for the LCQ?
Yeah, thanks to the wonderful Blue Oak TV on YouTube. You can find them at youtube.com/@BlueOakTV.
No.
Hashtag follow him.
No,
hashtag ad.
No, this is not an ad.
Yeah, no, that is indeed the plan. I'm excited about it. Going to give it a good shot. I have a sweet deck prepared. I think I've been labeled as Tinkerer Degenerate, and I think that definitely matches. So that's pretty fair. But yeah, should be good. I'm really excited.
Do you also have your 2 other decks for Conquest if you make it through?
No, I'm doing what I think a lot of players will be doing, which is setting themselves up so if they do make it through the LCQ, just to beg a bunch of friends who didn't make it through the LCQ for their best deck. So I think, honestly, enough people will not be making it through the LCQ that I think that's going to be fine. And I know a lot of the other decks that some other people I know are bringing are very, very good as well. So if I am able to get through, I need to dodge Sigismar all the way through. But if I can do it, I think I can get there. We'll see.
Well,
Nice.
let's be 100% honest. If the episode hasn't gone up yet, but I will give everybody a sneak peek here. I built an Ivanka deck this Saturday at our OP play in like 15 minutes, and it wrecks so many shops. It's wildly hilarious, and it's so much fun, and I highly recommend everybody at least try and build a 15-minute Nev deck. It's got 2 Lakshmis that every time you roll a die, it gets +2 boost.
Okay.
It's hilarious. Look, Nick will try to promote his deck building abilities any chance he gets. So
No. That's not true. I just like explaining that I have fun decks that I build. Well, fun maybe isn't necessarily the right way to explain it. But I like doing it, and it's fun. So anytime I build a new deck that I think is like actually winning, it's kind of fun to see that happen. So my Nadir deck, on the other hand, not winning, bad deck, horrible deck.
Really?
My Nadir deck, specifically my Nadir deck. I built it in a very stupid way. I fixed it, and now it's running fine.
Well, Nick, I can tell you, I should link you later in the week. I have a Google Doc that might be a really nice help for you. It's called Izmir Hostage, Kelon's Primer to Your New Best Friend.
No.
I think you'll love it. I think you'll love it.
Remember,
you'll find it in your Discord inbox very soon.
Remember, fun is a zero-sum game. If someone else is having fun, that means you're having less fun. So you need to take their fun from them.
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
Great. And Dorvian, welcome to the cast. First person to comment already. So looking forward to seeing others join us as we go on. We are going to go through the tiering. And now, Kelon Guy, which are the factions that you are going to be bringing into light today?
I know we've had some debate about this in the background, but I'm pretty sure I'm representing Izmir and Bravos, but correct me if I'm wrong there.
And there should be 2 factions each, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, 2 factions is. A guy trying, Matt, who are you going to do this, given you are a Bravos fanboy as well?
I'm going with Axiom and Muna. So
and Muna.
I'm here to represent the givers in Muna.
Yeah. and
the
Nick,
takers
you
of
are
Axiom.
the givers and the takers. And Nick, I'm assuming you're taking Ordis then, and also Lyra. And I know you fought hard for Lyra.
the top of the barrel, the cream of the crop, and also scraping the dregs of the bottom. So but I'll let everybody else determine which is which in terms of who gets the top and who gets the bottom.
Okay, and just like we did last time, the goal today is really to put our opinion forward of where we think the ranking is going to be. And in saying that, it doesn't mean you have ultimate say where you're going to put them on the list, but of course we all get to contribute, mock, or even cheer if we feel it is in the appropriate place as well. So looking forward to doing that. I'm taking I'll be looking at if there's any comments on the chat and also adding my 2 cents, but I do not have any factions today.
Yep. So we are going to go through and we're going to start alphabetical order. So whoever has Axiom is going to go first. I'm going to share the lovely screen that Chili has prepared for us. Welcome, everybody, to this horrible website of a ranking system. I know that some weird stuff happens here, but don't worry. We're going to keep it fun and friendly, and nobody's going to cry, right?
That's right. Just as we go,
that.
S tier, basically, you have maybe 1 to 2 decks that are in the S tier. D tech and D, you'd really never want to take to a competitive event. And as we saw last time we did this, Lindaway was in there, I believe. Was that correct, Tristan?
No, I think it was that. I think it was that Subash was pushed up to Lindaway tier. I'll call it, and I took offense. I was forced to add my 2 cents into the YouTube comments and force you guys to invite me along. Cruel as I am. Thank you.
Well, look at the bright side. I mean, Matt is doing. I mean, look, because I put it there, Matt might put it in a different spot now. So
yeah,
set 4 is out now. So we are including the set 4 heroes into this one. And I don't know if everybody's had a chance to play against or play with some of those heroes, but this is going to be really fun because I have words and opinions that maybe shouldn't be said out loud, but we're going to say them anyway.
I have words and opinions too, and they definitely shouldn't be said out loud. So we're 2 peas in a pod here.
These, I will say, mine are 100% accurate. Just they're going to be what you see at Worlds. Whatever I say,
just gospel truth.
Yep. So
all right,
be prepared.
Bold. All right, cool. Let's get started then. Starting with Axiom. And so kind of like we did last time, we're going to start with 1 hero. Everybody's going to start going down the line. And we will start you get to pick your hero, and then whoever it is, that's who you're talking about that turn. And then we're just going to run down the line.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. So we were just talking about him. I'll bring up my man Subash.
Oh.
Put him straight into D. I do think Subash got some good cards to help with his playstyle, mainly like Restocking Station is really going to help him with his card advantage and just like how much he loses by putting a card into reserve each turn. But we're also seeing a good amount of token hate come into the meta with the new set, and his main momentum being that brass bug, I think is going to get hurt by that. And to be honest, other Axiom heroes just do it better. I think he's a fun hero, but as probably the worst performing hero of all time, he's got to go in D.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Hold on, of all time?
Yeah, he's one of the only heroes to like. He's the fewest representation in like online tournaments.
Wow, I would say Arjun, but anyway, we can all have opinions.
Yeah.
Arjun squeaks by a bit just because of Festival, and so he gets some cheeky wins. But Subhash, I'm also Muno, so we'll get to Arjun as well.
Aren't you lucky? You got the cream of the crop right there.
Yeah. All right, Kelon.
I'm just going to add, I really like this take. I think virtually every single set that has released, there has been either a new problem for Subash specifically, or just dynamics that look like they would be fine and then don't end up playing out well at all. So an example from set 1, for example, would be the tendency of, you spend your 1 mana, you make your brass bug on day 1, you play an extra character, and your Sigmar opponent just plays a Baba Yaga and you lose the game. Like I can't even put into words how bad it feels as as a Subash player to get Baba Yaga, for example. So that was a very typical set 1 dynamic. I think some innovations have happened at various points in time, both with uniques that can work kind of uniquely well for the deck. Like there's some really sweet Capellias out there, but you're doing so much legwork already to try to make a hero sort of viable, and a lot of the new cards that come out just end up favoring the other Axiom heroes a little or a lot more in a lot of cases. So I think it's a case where like Subash, it's not that he's just not at all powerful, it's just that everything he does is done so much better by all of the other Axiom heroes. So yeah, and again, yeah, no undefeated finishes thus far on Subash for any player at all. It's hard because there aren't many players out there who are regularly playing a lot of Subash as well, so that doesn't give him better chances there. But yeah, I think D is pretty accurate.
Yeah, I will say the one thing that I have to add to this conversation before we move on to Bravos is I think Subash, realistically, only because of his ability, is one of the few heroes where it is acceptable to play ramp in Axiom. And because here's the thing, you have to remember that Swift Jin and now Smoldering Jin are in Axiom. So you can kind of make up for his ability by ramping. But the problem is that more often than not, like you can ramp with Smoldering Jin because I believe Smoldering Jin is in the common in Axiom in this set, right? Or are they both out of faction for...
I believe they're both out of faction. I think
okay,
Jin
well, never
is,
mind then. So
Bravos.
that needs out, anywhere from 4 to 6 rare slots. So not ideal, but it's possible.
Yeah, and just from Endorvian, he's also said maybe the Baku restocking loop may be able to help. But we'll see. We will see.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, all right. Kelon, take it away with your first Bravos hero.
All right.
I'm going to guess you're going to go with Basira.
Actually, I'm going to start with Itzadi.
Ooh, alphabetical.
And I will be placing Itzadi into the top of C, at least for now.
Unreal.
This isn't a situation where I think that this deck is completely unviable, at least competitively. I think that Bravos in general is a pretty good faction that does have just incredible cards at both common and rarity to begin with. I think that Itzadi is a hero that's also seen some success from really certain players. A couple names that come to mind would be Vikman, for example, from France, or Phobia from the US. Two really sweet ways of building the deck. I would say Phobia's uniques are just in a lot of cases just sort of strictly worse, but yet you can tell over time as well that their play patterns have evolved so well. And the deck can look very competitive. And I would say the one limiter there is in certain metagames, it can look really competitive. The issue is it's very much a deck that's reliant on either this Sakurabru Eat Me Energy Bars combo or typically both in this case, that plus the hunger. Certain metagames are really, really good for the hunger. If all of your opponents are, say, on Sierra trying to set up brass bug hives, you're going to feel really great when you get to eat everything they've worked for. Same if it's Fen with like 18 cards in reserve. That's going to feel really good. A lot of games, though, are not going to come down to that. And to me, it just feels like a pretty coin flippy hero to play for that. There's a lot of upside, but there's also a lot of downside. So for that reason, I'm putting it into C.
I would disagree only because I feel like with set 4, especially with something like Leviathan Spotter, where you are incentivized to play bigger stuff, I would put it bottom B. But
okay,
I think that's the right placement. I think top C is like a little too harsh. Not like harsh per se, but just like I feel like we haven't seen enough of a Chadi with set 4 stuff to throw it in C just yet. But I will not argue if the consensus is to put him like at the top of C. I think he's very bottom B. I think he's like absolute bottom of the barrel for B.
Yeah, I personally also think bottom of the B makes more sense than C. But at the same time, like the way I look at Achadi is there is no hero that can ramp as much as him, and there is nothing that you can do against ramp. Like every other strategy you have in play, there is a counterplay, but there is none for ramp. But I also believe that the card that makes him so hard to play against is the hunger, but you can play the hunger in every other hero in the faction. So, and much more versatility because of it. So I'm okay with it being C. So far, both heroes are one rank lower than we did last time. Tristan, Kelon Guy has really made it so that we are much harsher markers this time from the already.
I will say I think Achadi could also go into B or C. I think that's a fair thing. I think the main point that Kelon really brought up well is that I do find him incredibly meta dependent.
Mhm.
We're seeing him do pretty well in early Whispers because everyone was playing Gulrang and some like slower decks, and so then he just feasted. The hunger destroyed everything. It's like, great, I'm gonna take away all your card advantage, and I'm just going to overwhelm you in the late game.
The guys know what's up. It's yeah, we got it. We got
it. and typically at the start of new sets, the speed is typically faster, especially with 6 new heroes and one that is focused around ending their turn first. Like, so I think we're positioned more to go into a faster metagame overall. So Achadi is going to suffer because of that. But I think he'll always be able to find a place to play in the meta. And you know, I just think the hunger is such a powerful card. I legitimately, when I first saw it, I was like, that's an unplayable card. And then people started playing it, and I was like, oh my god, this is so much better than I thought. Any hero that can play it is still going to be able to do pretty well in the meta against certain decks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's the only thing that I will say, and you know, anybody can fight me on this. And Dorvine makes up a good point that Kaori's intervention in Achadi kind of rips just a little bit. The other point that I will make is that I went up against an Achadi build this Saturday, and let me just say, it was horrifying. And the only reason why I say that is because I think by the mid game he had ramped 4 times. And you know, when 10 mana while you're sitting on 6 is not fun.
I will also you brought up Kaori's intervention. I do think that also it really helps Achadi as well because it's a 1 mana after you. And forces people to play into the hunger or forces you them to commit stuff, and then you can play around it. And it also doesn't have fleeting, so you can play it twice for 2 mana. Give all your characters tough 8. What is it?
Yeah, tough 4 for
altogether?
1, so tough 8.
And still have mana to make a powerful play. So I do think Kaori's intervention is a very good card for the deck that allows you to be a little non-committal with your plays in the beginning. Which is why I do think it could go up to bottom of B. I think it's something that's like we're gonna have to reevaluate once things get filled out a bit more.
I agree with that totally.
Yeah. So, all right, I guess we're keeping him in C.
Yeah, just for now.
For now, at least.
It could move
Sad.
depending on what we see. So
gonna
we're going to
cry.
create a bell curve of some kind. All right.
I guess that's true. Okay.
On to Lyra. Nick.
Yeah. Okay. So here's okay. Everybody's gonna fight me, and you can fight me all you want. I think Auric is going B tier, pure, because I saw the formula, and it kind of hurts a lot.
Yeah, but
Nope. No, Chili. No, I don't care what anybody says. Everybody, like I said, you can fight me all you want.
You saw the London WCQ?
Yeah, and also in our local in our own tournament that we run on Thursdays as well. So the resupply craziness.
Yeah. I'm a believer. I am now a believer. I now understand what Francois was talking about in his article when he's like, we're all a bunch of idiots and we haven't found out the formula yet. I don't think he said that specifically like in that. I'm paraphrasing here, of course. But I think this is where he belongs. I think this is where they belong. If somebody wants to,
if you're going to put him in B tier, I'm going to make sure he's in the back end of B tier personally. But his upside is their upside is very large. Like they can go really well, but it is so unique dependent, and that is less than 10% of your deck. The rest of the time, you're up to chance. So unlike other heroes who have consistency, I don't think you do have that in Auric unless you're lucky or you have the ridiculous uniques. But for most decks, most people aren't going to have that. Anyway, it
Well,
has
it's-
huge upside.
I will agree that most people aren't going to have 3 Esmeraldas that have, anytime you play a 0 stat character, resupply. The thing is, though, is that I feel like Aurak has enough 0 stat and enough resupply by itself to where you can kind of get Fen-esque. The uniques just help you get there.
Yeah. Heck, I'd probably even play this in Fen instead of that same strategy in Fen.
I mean, here's the thing: the strategy goes good for either one.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, is that Aurak does it incredibly well because of Aurak's ability. The at-noon trigger with the performance counters.
So I saw Kelon guy moving his eyes in some of this discussion. So I am interested to hear what he or Matt has to say.
I think Matt is also, just itching to just tell me that I'm wrong.
I have a lot of thoughts, but maybe I'll let Matt go first. Maybe he covers something that I'm already thinking.
So I will say you can kind of view Aurak a bit as a card advantage hero, a little bit, because they do see an extra card with their ability. Not in the same vein as Fen and Traced, but slightly more than most other heroes. So they do get to they can find their uniques a bit more, but it takes a bit of a while to ramp up, not in the terms of mana as we normally talk of ramp, but in their own playing of 0 cost cards to get their ability going. I was curious if you would bring up the new rare that a lot of people I feel like are talking about, or at least whispering about, is Nuit. And like Nuit combo of just unique Nuits that end the turn and force so you play in an advantageous position. You have a bunch of 0 cost or 0 statted cards so that you only need 3 of them to end the turn. I'm not sure how viable that is. I think it's a bit cheeky, and I think it can get results. I would put Aurak in C, probably in C, because I do think the resupply chain is incredibly powerful. And if we're talking about that deck specifically and only that version of the deck, I could see it going into B, but Aurak as a hero is way too inconsistent to as a whole for me to think that they're in B.
And see, this is when, now that you've said that, now we're gonna see Aurak take the worlds. I mean, because you've said that, we're all gonna start eating our pants when Aurak wins worlds.
I mean, you're sort of right on that, but I think one of the funniest things about Worlds in general is that we're going to see some of the best decks in the game, like the absolute best decks in the game, just get permanently banned from the players who are most known for playing those decks specifically, right? So when it comes to Aurak here, I guess the big question I have is, are we making this rating scale based on the single best competitive deck put together for the hero that's existed thus far? Or are we basing it on the average competitive build for the hero?
Technically, the second one.
Yeah, it should be the average. That's the way I look at it from a perspective of the majority of players can get access to the style.
The reason why I ask there is because I think that deck, the resupply combo Aurak deck that was put together by Moondust specifically, although I know some other players were trying something along similar lines, specifically that deck from Moondust as well, those were 1 mana uniques, at least when you play them out from hand, which is particularly absurd. I truly believe that was a S tier deck at that specific point in the metagame where it won the qualifier, especially because there was so much Traced, and that deck could prey on Traced like nothing else. It was so good, so well suited into that. Meanwhile, I think the average competitive Aurak build is probably Subash tier.
Yes.
So honestly, I'm sort of
I would say above
fine.
Subash.
I'm sort of fine with B actually at the end of the day, because I think realistically, if we're willing to say, if we're going to be seeing, some Aurak during the Worlds weekend, for example, I think I think it's just as likely to be a really, really powerful build as it is maybe one that doesn't perform quite as well. uniques like that, man, those resupply uniques, they fix a lot of the consistency problems that you were touching on. It gives you ways that you can build the deck to really make sure that you will be able to go through your entire deck. I distinctly remember seeing Yala plus Ink Caster loops, even for games where you don't have the uniques immediately. That looked pretty good. But I think as well that deck will be happier when things are a little bit slower. And I think it was a guy trying who was mentioning earlier as well that start of a set things tend to be a little bit faster. So not quite sure how that'll end up. I honestly think B or C is pretty reasonable.
I will say, Chili and I talked about this last night. I don't know if the video is up yet, but we did our Lyra first impressions. I genuinely think that as a backup, because technically you're right, the resupply chain for Arak can be inconsistent if you don't have your uniques, right? Relying too much on either permanent triggers or hand triggers from characters, it's not really that consistent. You kind of want stuff that has those unique triggers on them, right? That being said, though, Nuit and Doppelganger, I think you're going to start seeing going into Arak decks a lot because of, and my mind immediately goes to like something like Zaratan, right? Or something where it's just you're getting so many boosts on a character. It's good for Hydrocana. It's good for Zaratan. So the fact that it gets seasoned and boosts off of that from whatever it's facing, I feel like that is a reason to play Doppelganger in Arak because it's a good contingency if you can't get the Nuit off and you're kind of missing your resupplies.
Yeah. I'll say Doppelganger would be good in any of the Lyra heroes because it doesn't really care about anything else. Of course, it does give you the extra benefit from the 0 cost in Aurak. But I think we've spoken enough about Aurak actually right now. We're happy to leave it in B for now.
Yeah, I think
the
B
first hero that's gone
is
up.
a good set. Yeah.
From D to B without many new cards. That's crazy.
Yeah. No, trust me. I'm a firm believer. I believe in the Aurak gods now. So, all right. Who's next with, was it Muna?
Yeah, that's me with Muna.
Muna.
And we were talking a bit about him earlier, so let's just get him down into D. My friend Arjun.
Yes.
I will say I do think Arjun goes above Subash.
Okay.
Mainly,
I will agree.
Mainly on the back of Festival. And with Cowrie, I'm not even sure if Arjun is the best Festival deck anymore. I was always a proponent of Rin Festival.
Me too.
Just cycling your deck, trying to find the pieces you need. But Arjun having the ability to turn any card into a support anchor, essentially, was very good. But Cowrie's draw, I think, might just mean that they are the Festival deck that is most prevalent at this point. And Arjun didn't really get any new cards in general, and we saw a lot of every faction get access to more removal. In like Detonation, Souls Hunt, Moth Collision, each faction got one. So I think that's going to hurt him even more, or hurt them even more.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Also, I don't know if everybody saw the chat of Uwurak.
Oh, there you go.
So
Fluvius Smith, welcome to the chat.
Good times. All right, cool. I think that's fine. I think that's a good explanation that really doesn't need. I think, unfortunately, that our man Arjun, I think they're just a dead horse, and I don't think we need to beat it anymore.
All right.
I mean, I'll largely agree with that. I had a lot of Arjun games back in the day. I mean, Festival specifically. I think Festival's pretty strong right now, actually. But I do think you might be right that Arjun is maybe one of the weakest Festival decks now. I know personally, trying to prepare a deck for competitive, where I know I'm going to need to win more than like 2/3 of my matches in order to be successful with it, I just couldn't really push Arjun past that, and that's the reason why I dropped it. So personally, I think D's perfectly fine.
Yeah. No worries. And welcome Freeloader using his alternate account, his burner account. Now everybody knows that he has one. So, all right, on to Ordis.
All right, you know what? I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take the risk, and I think I'm gonna put Zen in C.
Okay.
So,
Why? Just you got to give a reason why.
I know, and I'm about to. So comparatively, with Golrang, with Sigismar, and with Waru, right? I don't think you're going to see Warus at all this season. And if you do, it's going to be very surprising. It's going to be people like me trying to be like, we can make Waru great again.
Or a hostage deck.
Or a hostage deck, like some degenerates play. Golrang has some interesting things that could help it this season, right? The problem is that Zen by itself, Ascend is a very, very good mechanic, but I feel like people are going to be watching out for that too much. And so if people know that they're going to be going up against Zen decks, it's kind of like Sigismar, where you kind of have to prepare for Zen. But the problem is that Sigismar is a much bigger threat with the token generation than Ascending is.
I would also say Sigismar can take advantage of a lot of the Ascending cards. Just
That's
you don't
the
get
point,
the card
yeah.
draw. But they can still take advantage.
Yeah. So I think as of right now, I don't think the meta is fitting where Zen wants to be, which is like B or A, because genuinely using Ascend at the pre-release was insane. It was so good, and the fact that you can draw off of Ascend too is really, really good. The problem is I think people are going to be preparing so much for that Zen is just going to get just absolutely drop kicked into the dirt.
Yeah, I guess, and I'll let the other guys talk. The fact that it's a very low to the ground meta means you can just block with one, and that covers the card draw, even if they lose. I think the card draw is the more impactful element of it, personally. Any thoughts before we transition to Izmir? I know you're itching to go to Izmir, Kelon guy, so...
No, I'm just happy to add. I mean, I think one of the things that's really awesome about Altered is that in any given metagame, I feel like there's always been completely undiscovered decks that could actually be almost top tier, even in a lot of cases. I think Zhen might be one of those. I wouldn't be too surprised if there's some really sweet uniques from the set that work uniquely well with Zhen, but until we see them, I'm also very happy with C. I think that's a really reasonable estimate.
Yeah, I also think one of her worst matchups is going to be Sigismar.
Yeah.
Just because that Ordis Recruit is always going into the Hero Expedition, and so that kind of disincentivizes her Ascend ability when she's first player. And Sigismar has a great ability to attack on both sides. So won't really get much out of the much value out of the draw, and will also be able to use the Ascend cards very well. I think Zen is a reactive deck. So I think it's a deck that will be refined as the metagame goes on and will become more powerful as the metagame goes on. You know, we see a lot of Izmir heroes are like that, especially like Akesha. Akesha, you have to know what you're playing against in order to pilot her well. I think Zen is very similar to that. And so we'll have an incredibly weak showing in the beginning, but I do think that there's a lot of room to grow for them.
Nice.
Yeah. Here's where I think the meta is going to go for Gen before we move on. This is generally where I think it's going to go. I think it's going to go towards Manjet, specifically in the rare for whenever you attempt to ascend again, with uniques that also pair with that same ability. So I don't know if there are going to be any uniques. I don't think that there have been any found so far that have that ability, kind of like, if you attempt to ascend again, do this thing. I don't think that those have been found yet, but I think that could be a combo where, you know, the attempt to ascend, where instead of ascending you do an extra thing, will be pairing off of the Manjet.
Yeah, that is an interesting thing, because I have definitely had games where I've tried out Zen and have not had my rare Manjets out, and then I've just had so much Ascend that it's like blocking up my hand. I'm like, I can't effectively use this. If I had my Manjet out, I could resupply a bunch and get value off of that. But it kind of seems not entirely like a festival deck, but you are kind of reliant on a couple key cards, and if you don't find them, if they're in the bottom half of your deck, you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
with
I
the
know I've
current
played-
build, at least
yeah,
the one
I've-
I was trying.
Yeah, and I've played at least 30 games on Zen, and I've won twice. So, and I'm not a bad deck builder, but apparently not good either. So there we go. At least not with Zen. So,
Yeah.
okay, over to you, Tristan. Kelon guy, on to Izmir. Who are you going to pick as your first scapegoat?
I'm actually going to start with Aphanas.
Oh,
Oh,
I
hell
have a
yeah.
prediction.
And I will be putting Aphanas just below Aurak in B.
Okay.
Let me preface this.
that's game.
No, I appreciate that, and I agree with that wholeheartedly.
I'm going to preface this by saying altered players
No,
sometimes
B, not D. B.
this is good. This is good. This is right. Altered players' hearts are fickle in a lot of cases, and a particular example I would use for that is Traced from early on.
Yeah.
Traced had a massive popularity boom at one point, especially when players realized that you could get some very reasonably costed uniques, and that deck was absolutely absurd with early Haven Bravos Bastion before the initial errata for the Axiom faction. First it was a suspension, and then it was an errata later on. Traced play rate completely ceased to exist after the removal or suspension of Haven, and then even after it came back in its errated form, people weren't playing that for months. And I do think that this is a case where, yes, of course, the hero got weaker from those changes, but people were abandoning it needlessly in many cases as well. That's sort of my feeling with Aphanas at the moment. I think the hero is still incredibly powerful. There's still a lot of support and key cards that work uniquely well in that hero. An example would be Katagiran Mage Dancer. There's no hero that will get better value out of a character when you play it from reserve, for example, at the start of a day. That card particularly is insane for that. The uniques that are available for that hero, one of the reasons why I think Sigismar is so strong out of Ortis, for example, is that the restrictions on the uniques often just don't count when it's Sigismar. Aphanas has a little bit of that as well, where oftentimes the restriction on it is having boosts, and it turns out your hero natively gives you that. So I think that hero is incredibly powerful. And the other thing that Aphanas really has going for them is that they have some of the best players in the game who are still playing that hero, and I really believe in them. An example there would be Nadir, who's World Championship qualified currently. He was an early Waru player who was very excellent at Waru. There's players like Heaven, who has maybe the best uniques in the game. 1-cost Spindle Harvesters with Spell Return. Specifically 1-cost Spindle Harvesters, I think they're still pretty okay because the nerf to Aphanas affected 1-cost cards, and your ideal scenario then is having a 1-cost Spindle Harvester on day 1, followed by a 2-cost spell. So that's still totally fine. So I think potentially a player like Heaven could do really well with it with his builds. And otherwise, Tackfire as well is an incredibly strong player. I think they've always had some of the more creative and like cerebral builds for the deck. And I'm really excited to see if they're able to convert any of that into success, even when people I think are starting to discount Aphanas. So I'm happy putting it in B, but I'm happy to take any feedback there.
No, I before Matt gets a chance to talk here, I also believe he should be B. I actually think he'd be at the top of B because people have to really tailor their decks to play against Aphanas, and they're not going to do that. So that he will have a huge advantage when people don't actually prepare for him. And I think, especially, there's also some cards that discount even your 2-cost to become a 1-cost. Oh, no, sorry, no. Your 4-costs become 3-costs. You can get a whole bunch of benefits. I honestly feel that this is a sleeper for me to win Worlds with one of these heroes because you're just not prepared for it. And as you said, those that have been playing Aphanas for basically a year straight are incredibly versed in terms of how they can actually win any match.
Yeah, I also think Aphanas is such an interesting hero because he has this deck building constraint to him because you have to have both spells and characters. That's why one of the strongest cards that was added to him was Moth to a Flame because it was a character in itself that also gave a boost. And we're now seeing a new mechanic that can work with that a bit in Defect. And I actually think that Brainwash is going to be a great meta call, especially if we're seeing Sigismar and Traced as top meta decks. Then Brainwash is taking card advantage from them, giving you a character and giving you a boost. So I'm still unsure if it can. if it needs to be the right meta to put that card in the deck. But I do think Afanis is going to have a lot of interesting tools, and especially also Ismir Signet that can like replace the sort of space that magical training was, while also giving access to other types of spells and no longer being fleeting because of the 2 costs, and a card that you can still bounce back to hand with those uniques that everyone was abandoning when Afanis was nerfed. Oh my god, my bounce uniques are awful now. I can't do anything. Yeah, you can still take Off You Go and Ismir Signet back. So
if I can add one little detail there as well, I think in general, all of the Izmir heroes are going to struggle with one thing, and that's the reason why I think that low B is still fine for Afanis. It's specifically that traditionally, all of the Izmir heroes really struggle with Sigismar specifically, and until they really prove that they have either some way of dealing with that, or otherwise they're so good against everything else that that poor matchup into Sigismar isn't that big of a deal. I'm very hesitant to bump it up, but I still think these heroes are incredibly powerful out of the faction.
Also, in the Conquest format, if you have just a Sigismar weakness, you can ban Sigismar and just say, okay, I feel like I'm good into your other matchups. That is a format that is only currently at Worlds, but we could see some evolution of it going into the future.
All right, transitioning to Axiom.
All right, both of my characters, both of my heroes I put in so far are populating D. So I'm gonna go for some opposite, and I'm gonna talk about Traced.
Yeah,
Traced has to be S tier.
Yep.
Just I really like the way that Traced has sort of evolved into this deck that isn't really playing removal much anymore and is just focusing on outmaneuvering the opponent.
Yeah.
You have, and you're kind of immune to removal in a lot of ways. Not immune, but like removal feels bad against you because you're playing so many cards. You have so much card advantage. The biggest weakness to Trace is if you're unable to get on lines early. So cards like, I do think a card that's going to hurt Trace is Lyra Signet, being able to give 2 characters fleeting in the early game. If you're able to get that off, will be able to keep Trace down a bit, but eventually they're going to get online. They always do. Maybe you stall them a turn or two, and if you haven't beaten them by that point, they can just vomit stats all over the board and find the key cards that they need because they have so much card advantage.
Yeah, and the other thing they've got is the ability of having that new permanent that removes fleeting.
Yeah, restocking station.
Yeah, so it's just phenomenal for them. If that's an issue, that they can just keep on recycling things that will then trigger, especially Dr. Frankenstein, right?
I think some players thought that this deck might suffer a lot from the bug fix errata changes, etc. And yeah, that was maybe a bit of an elephant in the room for people saying that a certain gameplay dynamic feels bad for a little while there. But I think Traced over time has really proven that it's not just that version of the deck that's super good. It's just the base level deck as well. The fact that it feels like you should be able to sabotage that deck to interact with the reserve shenanigans, and it just helps the Trace to power up even sooner. It's a really good deck. I would be shocked if it isn't one of the most fielded decks by Worlds competitors. So I think that's a really good shout.
Yep.
Yeah, no notes. I hate
All right.
Traced.
All right, on to Bravos.
Okay.
All right, Bravos, where am I at? Oh, yeah, this is a good one. All right, ready? Basira.
Ooh.
S tier.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Over Kojo is what I'm thinking now if you're putting it up there, because there can't be more than two S tiers in my mind.
I'll get to Kojo. I'll get to Kojo.
Hold up now.
I think so. Clearly, with me putting it here, I think Basira is one of the best decks. Absolutely. I think it doesn't actually have certain weaknesses that Traced even does sometimes. Maybe Traced is a little bit more resilient in some cases, but there are decks, your Hostage here and there, or your Lyra Festival, for example, where I feel like a Basira player might be much more comfortable in a lot of cases. I've been really impressed by so many players actually who are playing Basira repeatedly, and I'm going to keep mentioning names. If you think that you're out there and you're a Basira player who I should be mentioning, please drop me a DM somewhere so I can have you on my radar as well, especially with me showing up to Worlds next week. It would be nice to know in advance that you're out there to snipe me. Players like Flolk or FLOL. I don't know how to pronounce the rest of that. Regardless, narrowly did not get a World Championship qualification thus far, to my understanding, but narrowly. Acraft, who is Season 2 AWOL Invitational winner.
Yeah.
Exalt's Argon, who is incredibly good out of the US. EDA Quicoro from Spain, and then actually the Italian community is really strong with this deck as well. RN Gentarosa and Giacomozu, who's also qualified for Worlds off the deck. There are so many excellent Basira players. The uniques that this deck has can be so absurd sometimes. I think Kojo uniques are often much more standard, like just base level good, but some of these Basira synergies with the boosts, and then of course restrictions are funny like that with uniques, where if you can meet the restriction, the unique is often much more powerful, and Basira can often do that and get some really powerful effects out of it. I think that deck is fantastic. I think there's various ways of playing it. It has access to the hunger in some cases as well. There's a lot going for Basira at the moment, and I think it sounds a little edgy putting it on S tier, but I think I'm pretty comfortable with it.
Yeah, I love that take. I really do. The other card you didn't mention is a Clute, to be able to play as that defensive card that costs 4 to really, really stop your opponent from being able to progress, or especially if they're really low on cards. They're so versatile. The ability of choosing when to trigger your boost, so you can choose late play, unlike Amuna's Tasia, who has no choice, and they can wait till the very last moment to trigger that. So big call for some people.
Yeah, and notably, Exhaust does not trigger traced hero ability for like something getting sabotaged, for example. So that's really sweet. But you're totally right on Aklut. That card's very synonymous with Basira, but notably as well, sometimes the uniques you'll see unique Akluts that are draw-based instead. So you're not even getting that double exhaust effect in some cases. You're just getting something else that's incredibly powerful. There's so many interesting ways of playing that deck. I also think it's one that really heavily rewards play familiarity and just general play skill with it. I remember watching some of these replays of Flols or FLOL or whatnot, where I just did not understand the lines he was taking in the early game because they did not compute in my head, but clearly he knows what he's doing way better than I do or many people do in general. It really rewards familiarity and expertise, so that's cool.
I'm curious, just because I brought up for Rock, I feel like I have to bring it up for Basira as well. The Out of Faction knew it. This is, again, a lot of people, I feel like, knew it as one of the more unique abilities in the latest set. Had some people talking about 7 boosts. That's all I need to immediately stop your turn. How realistic do you think that is in Basira? Or do you think it's a bit of a bait to go for it?
My guess is doable, but bait. I don't think there's that much upside actually for playing Nuit. I think there's some fringe scenarios where you want that, but overall, putting in the legwork in order to enable that synergy, I think is taxing your deck more than it's worth.
Yeah,
agree. It's not a card that I'd be bringing in. It'd be fun for one of the challenges that Nick likes to bring in for us. So, but very, very difficult to
everybody.
To
you better be waiting.
Benefits.
Better be waiting for the day that you can subscribe to our Patreon to get in on the bounty board.
All right, so we're going to leave it in S. Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with that because
I was just say I could see it in A, but I also think it's powerful enough to be in S.
I think the funny part is that anything that revolves off getting a boost is stupid because it inherently just helps Basira just steamroll whatever you have planned.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't even matter what the effect is, whether like when I gain a boost, draw a card, when I gain a boost, exhaust something. Either way, you're always at a disadvantage. And that's why stuff like Lakshmi cards in Lyra work the way that they do, because you're able to do the thing so many times, like to an annoying degree. So yeah, I'm surprised. I was gonna say B because I haven't seen Basira played much,
man.
But the Basira decks that I have seen just stomp.
By the way, I made this list of players who are really phenomenal with this deck like 2 hours ago, and immediately after that same person I keep talking about, Flol, he just won yet another AWOL with Basira, 6-0. So,
yeah.
Alrighty then.
All right,
All right, cool.
on to Muna.
Oh no,
No, Lyra.
Lyra.
Sorry,
Oh,
Lyra.
Lyra. Okay, cool. Okay, don't get mad at me.
I'm already mad.
I think you're going to start seeing Nevenka come out a lot in this, only because, and this is the good reason, right? There are so many uniques that can do the thing that Nevenka does, right? Whether it's, helping with dice rolls, whether it's whenever you roll a dice, do a thing,
Ooh.
whenever you're like increasing dice counts, like there's a reason why I'm a bad pilot, right? I'm such a stupid pilot when it comes to good decks. The Nevenka deck that I built in 15 minutes steamrolled, and only because of like misplays and because we hadn't learned the lines yet, went 2-2 at our previous plays against some of the best decks at like that go up against at our local play. I don't think she lost. So a friend of mine and I built this deck together using like most of the cards that, like, I think we both contributed like one unique and then we just grabbed another one from somewhere. She went undefeated with that deck. I'm just an idiot pilot who doesn't know how to play. So this deck, not even kidding. If I can throw a slapdash Nevenka deck together in 15 minutes, think about somebody who's been playing Lyra for the entirety of the 4 sets, seeing what's been coming out with like set 2, set 3, set 4 coming with Nevenka, and it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, A seems very strong for Nevenka, given that there's the risk. There's a risk. Yes, I agree. That's why I don't think Norak should be a B. But anyway, but there is a risk with her. But I also think the upside is huge because she's the only hero that can basically wait to the very, very end to trigger her ability.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're losing a side, you have a chance to potentially anchor. And you don't care if you lose the card. The boost may get you enough to be able to progress forward. I actually think she's also one that I don't know how much Ascend is in Lyra per se, but Ascend would really help her a lot as well to be able to tie an area. I just don't see Ascend being very common in Lyra. The upside is huge. If you get the when you roll the die uniques are fantastic, but they're also not that common.
Yeah, that's my one sort of hold up with Nevenka is, when I think Nevenka, when I think good Nevenka player, I think all of the marbles.
Mm-hmm.
All the marbles is amazing. I've gone up against that deck and it's scary to go up against it.
Right?
What?
That's what I'm saying. Like it's Nevenka's scary. But
he has incredibly tailored uniques that, like, once they get going, it's so hard to do anything against them. And I think, I mentioned this card earlier, and I think it's an incredibly powerful card. Lyra Signet just helps that even more because it you draw a card, you roll a die, you can resupply, and then if you have all the marbles uniques for 2 mana, you can pop it back, or you can give your stuff anchor, you can pop whatever back. And it also has versatility of giving fleeting or the Anansi ability. I think it's a incredibly powerful card that Nevenka can use well. I would say personally, B tier, kind of the same way that I feel with Arak, although I do think Nevenka is better in that the average Nevenka deck, I do think is much worse than the top meta decks that we're seeing Nevenka be played in. Nevenka also had the versions of Nevenka that we're using, what's it called? Loki, the Loki decks.
Oh yeah.
I don't think those people need to play Nevenka anymore. I think that they would go to Nadir. Personally, I think Nadir is more consistent than Nevenka. And so if they're not using the actual die rolling mechanic for their uniques, I could see them just popping over to Nadir. Although I'm a Nadir fanboy. So
No, same, 100%. Here's where now, to be fair, when I put Nevenka here, this is bottom of A, not top of A, because nobody else has been put into A yet. I think it is above Arak, but I think it is at the bottom or close to the bottom of A tier. So I'm not saying that it's like really close to S. I'm just saying that I think the way that Nevenka can go in this set, because of Lyra Signet and all these new cards that are coming out, but immediately I start thinking of like Daedalus. Even Daedalus, is
Daedalus
such
is
a
great.
good card. So that's why I'm saying A tier, but more bottom of A tier.
I don't really hate A tier, actually. I mean, I'm just thinking to myself, like, all of the marbles, more like all of the dice rolls. This deck is so absurd. It has so many of those bug fix traced elements to it, but of course not errated. Daedalus loops plus those card return uniques. So absurd. That is a really, really good deck. I would be terrified if I was at Worlds and sitting across from an Nevenka player. If they do have something like that, I would be absolutely shaking. At the same time, if that's the average Nevenka build, I'm fine with that going lower. But I think that's really up to you, Nick. Is that, Gamma Knight or all of the marbles, or is that just any Nevenka build? But yeah, I think A is reasonable. I think B is reasonable. If it's just, average build, I think even maybe C is reasonable. But yeah, totally up to you. I'm flexible there. But yeah, I think that's an awesome deck for our top players.
Yeah,
I don't know, man. I think you're gonna start seeing a bunch of scary Nevenka stuff.
All right, well,
yeah,
let's leave it there as we continue. So
We
on
can
to
fight
Muna
later.
this time.
So okay,
All right,
now we've got Muna.
Muna. All right. I am going to choose. I was thinking Rin. I was. Yeah, I'll go with Rin. Rin, I feel like I'm gonna put in C tier. I really like Rin. I would put her probably. The problem is she's a card advantage hero whose card advantage happens at the end of the turn.
The worst time.
And so she has to often discard her cards because she's overflowing her reserve. So she hand fixes more than she really she gets card advantage a lot of the time. If you're able to use cards like Lyra Contortionist or Copelia, you can get some advantage off that, but then you're putting in some below average rares in order to fix the inherent problem that she has. And she got some interesting cards in like Forest Nymph, and Muna Signet has some play because it can put a forest marker. But I think she can be very strong as an aggressive hero, getting out a lot of stats and filtering your hand for what you need. I just don't see her being able to perform consistently well, which is a shame because she's probably my favorite Muna hero.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I might put her above Zen, though. I don't know.
I would put her above Zen myself as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
I would
Here's
not
the
put her
fun
above
part.
Achati, though. I think Achati.
Here's the fun part too, is that especially with like Forest Nymph now, Forest Nymph, Persephone, Leshy, Demeter, there's plenty of stuff. I mean, even now with Muna Signet, you can force the forest enough without being like in a Nadir deck to where I think now you might see a resurgence of Rin. But the point still remains that Rin's ability sucks because it is at the end of the day, kind of like what Chili was saying. Like you want that to be at noon, if I would even say like if her ability was if I have two anchored if I have two characters in forest at noon, draw a card, right? Like I feel like that's harder but more acceptable than her current ability.
Yeah, if you have really strong uniques, it's very beneficial. Like Midlona took their deck, which is very much centered around Copelia and the festival, to come second in Canada. So there is really strong upside, but I also think people can prepare if your main delivery is festival build to make sure you remove the festival. So
I think we're also noticing a little bit of a trend here, just seeing how all of the heroes are lining up so far, where I feel like the heroes in C and D tier are ones where there aren't really just many uniques that sort of win the game on their own in a lot of cases. Or when I say on their own, maybe it's a synergy with another card that you're playing as a 3 of in your deck, or maybe it is literally on your own in case of some of the Basira uniques, for example. But Rin struggles with that. Shadi struggles with that. Subash struggles with that. Arjun definitely does. Zhen as well, to my understanding. I think that might be one of the key dynamics that holds these heroes down a little bit, is lack of heroes or lack of uniques that synergize with those heroes particularly well and have such an impact as some of the best heroes in the game at the moment.
yeah, and I'll go take that a little bit further, Kelon guy. It's also an element of if you just rely on uniques, your chance of success is much lower than if you have a game plan that the uniques enhance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually going to hard disagree with that take.
Okay, go ahead. This is good.
I think that 3 out of 39 cards when you're drawing 2+ cards a day is a massive number of cards you're seeing in comparison to number of uniques in your deck. If you're able to get a set of 3 uniques that are all very powerful while you're playing one of those heroes that can really win the game off of one or some combination of uniques in the deck, I think that's a really reasonable way of looking at it. I think the problem is that with some of these lower tier heroes, at least as we're placing them, of course, maybe something else will come out that we're not quite familiar with. But I think in a lot of cases, the problem is these heroes will see their unique and it's just fine. It does something, but it doesn't. It doesn't win. And you're very likely to see a unique very quickly in a game of Altered.
I will say also, any Muna hero kind of has to have an asterisk next to it because of Muna Festival. And I think Rin is a good player of Muna Festival. One, because you can, once you advance with her, you draw a card and then you put a card into reserve. So you get to choose what support abilities you need. I need sleep, so I'm going to put Snoozer Shroom there. I need anchored, so I'll put Muna Druid. You can craft your hand, and you're getting deeper into your deck earlier on than something like Fen, or Trace doesn't have Festival, but you're getting deeper into your deck than a lot of heroes early on. That advantage peters out. And so I do, and as Kelon said earlier, Festival is, like, I think is a reasonable deck right now. It kind of, to me, Festival puts the impetus on your opponent to be like, okay, do you have the answer? If you don't, then I'm gonna kind of get away with it. So I do think, for myself to bring it to a tournament, I'd be a little scared because I feel like I wouldn't have as many ways to outplay my opponent as I would in other decks. But it is still it can be very strong in the meta.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I agree.
I think Rin is going to start seeing some fun stuff.
And
I also think Rin's super fun.
I'm not offended with your comments at all. I actually think it's good to have different takes as well. So this
Why
is good.
aren't you offended? I'm here purely to offend you, Chili.
Yeah, fight
what
me.
Are we doing?
Fight me, Chili.
We need to fight for content.
No,
we need the drama.
It is true. Uniques can come in more, but I also look at Traced. Traced can have so many different uniques that just enhance them. Rin needs specific uniques to be viable.
Yeah. All right.
On to Orders.
I'm just gonna get it over with. I'm just gonna put Waru in D.
Okay. I don't think there's much to say about Waru, to be honest.
Yeah.
The nerf was, they went too far. One of the 2 benefits should have been removed, not both. They might as well just retire the hero.
Yeah, I think Waru's got one foot in the grave.
Do we want to argue about placement in D tier? How much do we care about that?
Oh, 100% this matters.
Okay.
I'd like to propose that we put him 1 above Subash. Reason for that being that I've seen Runefolk hostage one too many players while playing Waru specifically, and that looked pretty absurd.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever quite seen Subash do anything that gnarly.
I would agree. There's also we saw a couple in the European BGA, we saw a Waru get top 32.
Yes, we did.
I believe, and it was on the back of some very strong uniques that like drew 3 cards or something like that. But it was Waru has the ability to still perform a little bit. I think is incredibly handicapped as well, but but I do think where he's at right now is correct. I would put Subash beneath him.
And Dirks was also able to take it in Germany into the top 32 as well. So
great.
But it is, it has more to say about the player than it has to say about the hero.
Yeah, it's all about the pilot, because we can agree that I can play great decks, but just not win with them. So,
it's not fine. The deck's fault. It's Nick's.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not the deck's fault. Definitely not the deck's fault. So it's 100% my fault.
All right. So then on to Izmir.
All right. Next, we are going to go for Akesha, who I will be tentatively placing into the top of B tier.
Okay.
Above Afanis.
Much to Cole's dismay.
A couple of reasons for this. So I'm going to continue my pattern of talking about specific players who I think are particularly sweet on these heroes. I think a teammate of mine, AQZ Runefolk, is a absolute Akesha legend in general, both with the more fair builds of the deck, things like with the Hunger or just playing that like Baba Yaga control style of gameplay. I think that's still a pretty cool way of playing the deck. I don't think it's necessarily as good as Hostage Akesha even, which I mean, maybe we'll talk a little bit more about Hostage strategy when I mention some other heroes still. But yeah, I think that's a pretty reasonable shot. I think B would correspond pretty well to a more fair way of playing the deck. There's a couple players who are really well known for that sort of thing, especially Team After You from Brazil. Megon X, who I believe is their team captain, and Aklo are both really good Akesha players and have mostly used fair styles of gameplay there. There's SUD CMX972. I don't know any better way of saying that. If you're out there, you can let me know. They had some really, what I think were really coherent builds for the deck that were doing something a little bit special, but really consistent. But I think those players are also struggling a little bit figuring out just the right way of playing it for Skybound Odyssey still. So I think they're probably, if it's just that fair Akesha style, I would put it even low B. But the fact that there is that Hostage Akesha, I think that deck is really, really good. That to me is bumping it just past Afanis and Aurak here.
Yeah. Now, one thing, like, if we're talking about competitive meta, outside of the Asia qualifier, where Runefolk and Fitz made top 32, there's been no other representation for Akesha in any of those top cuts. That, as far as I'm aware, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But if you do have the Hostage play, because you can get it done so quickly and still advance through, what's the cut? The Small Step Giant Leap, you can really just destroy your opponent very quickly. Well, after the half an hour of setting up.
I wonder.
Yeah, aren't round timers like, supposed to be like 15, 20 minutes a game?
Half an hour.
I'm curious to see if in a best of 3 format, if we'll start seeing more concessions. At World specifically, where it's like, okay, I'm in the hostage loop. Do I try to fight out of it, or do I just move on to the next game and try not to run out of time?
It's probably worth noting, though, that if you're running up against a slow deck, and you're typically going to assume that Akesha is a slow deck, that my understanding of the way that the way that tiebreakers work currently, if it does run out of time, is, for example, say you get into a situation where Akesha has won the first game and you're late in the second game, and then time starts getting called, and it's already, you don't even have time for a third game. You're going to have to play based on, I guess, whoever is further on the tumult. At which point, if you're a late game deck, you're typically going to be a little bit behind then still on the tumult. So you're going to lose that. And then you have a 1-1 result immediately, which means you have to play 2 days of game 3 is my understanding of this, at least from the comprehensive rules guidelines. And you're going to lose just playing 2 days and then seeing who's ahead on the tumult at that point. So that really worries me in general for slow decks. But I still think that, maybe it'll be a situation where people do concede. And overall, I think the cards are really powerful that the faction has access to. So
in Conquest specifically, though, if you've already won with Akesha, that deck can no longer be used. So
That's
presumably your slowest deck is already out of the way.
that's true.
And there's just one card I want to sort of highlight from the new set with this that I think is really interesting in Akesha, and that is the hair. You can, after you, and then play the hair to make your opponent the first player, and then you become the first player the next turn. And we're seeing a lot more heroes have "if I'm first player" text. We have 3, I believe, in Skybound Odyssey on top of Akesha, Lindaway, and Kojo. And Kojo is a deck I think a lot of people will bring, and keeping them off that Buddha token, or that Buddha token might be very powerful.
Yeah.
So I think it's an interesting inclusion to the deck.
Good take.
And Dorvian brought up a really good point that it's really funny if we see Moyo and Akesha on a world stream, just so people have a bad time casting that. So that's a funny point to make. All right, back to the top. Who's got Axiom?
I do.
Give me your Axiom.
I'm going to say Sierra.
Ooh.
And I currently have her in top of C, bottom of B. I think some of the new cards in the new set gave her some early tempo options that really help her until she gets to her Brassbug Hive. But she still, we've mentioned it before, she suffers so much against cards like the Hunger that she has what I feel are incredibly polarizing matchups. You know, if you're playing against a deck that does well against Sierra, it does very well against Sierra. And we've also seen we're also seeing with both Isari and Traced, they're running the Grems, which can just gobble up a lot of Sierra's early tempo. So I was having trouble deciding where to put her. I think she can have some very strong turns. But in terms of consistency, my gut says because of consistency, I would put her in C, but I do think she has some powerful options that can bring her into B. So I was going to ask all of you for some help in clarifying that position.
I think B is acceptable.
I think she sits in the similar to Achati. Except it's not reliant on uniques. It's more reliant on what your opponent has for removal. And given, I would say, out of the representation is going to be in more than likely, I would say probably a quarter of representation sits in heroes that have the Hunger. You're going to struggle late game if they play it out. You've lost your entire engine. But against any other hero, you have a much stronger say. And there's a lot of good Sierra players out there that can kind of work around it. But you need the engine to survive in the way that you play.
Yeah.
I like bottom of B, really. I think top of C would also be reasonable, but overall, I'd say Sierra is probably worse than Traced, way better than Subash. I think B's pretty fun.
Way better than Subash.
I really, really like Subash, only because...
Subash? Do you mean Sierra?
Well, hold on.
Okay.
No, hold on. I like Subash because of the ability and because I have like some really fun uniques that can go well with Subash. That being said, though, I feel like Sierra is just objectively the better Subash.
I thought you were going to say I like Subash because of his ability to allow us to put everything else higher on the tier list.
Yeah, but here's the thing: is that like the fun part is that like if you have a unique that can go into Subash more often than not, it can also go into Sierra.
Yeah.
I just want to say every house needs a floor, so thank you, Subash, for giving us that.
Yeah. And then
Oh.
every house also needs a basement so that we can hide the bodies of Waru.
Yeah.
So.
I feel for poor Sape living in Peru right there, and like, trying to make Subash work and just not getting any love.
Yeah. Okay. Bravos?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, we're gonna do Kojo. And
Yeah.
Kojo,
Are we just
I will
gonna
be.
save all the last heroes for last? I'm fine with that.
Yep.
Yeah, it seems like it.
I will be placing Kojo top of A tier.
Okay.
Ooh.
I think Kojo is a really good deck. I think it's really consistent overall. Something that worries me a little bit for Kojo is that some of Kojo's best players have seemingly either abandoned Altered or abandoned Kojo in a lot of cases. A couple examples there being Leith Fey, who haven't really heard much of in a while. And then Pava, for example, I believe even swapped off to Axiom Faction entirely away from Bravos. At this point, I think we still have a lot of really good Kojo players out there. I think actually our team AQZ rather, has a pretty good monopoly on a lot of the best ones. I think 3 out of the best 4 even. I'd say Freeloader, it's Rinku, Belteshazzar, all AQZ there. Really, really excellent. The player who I've always had my eye on, who I think is really phenomenal, is Vint from the US as well. Yeah, Kojo, really excellent hero for those players. It's also one that's really approachable for newer players to get into and play really competitive games against some of the top decks in general. Again, I was touching on earlier, Bravos just has some of the best commons and rares in the game. And I'll definitely stand by that. It's a good hero overall. The cards it plays really excellent. It's reasonably flexible. I don't think you're randomly going to lose to a festival deck while knowing that you're about to lose to a festival deck, for example. If you're prepared for it, you'll be able to play around it. It's a deck that really rewards learning over time how to structure your days, how to what other people are likely to be playing that you need to play around. And so how maybe you're playing an Isunboshi out on day 1 in a certain matchup, and then in a different matchup you're just holding on to it even for the late game, even as a sort of after you that also threatens to advance or give a boost then from reserve, that sort of thing. I think there's a lot of skill expression there that's maybe deceptive when you see it being played at a base level by someone who's newer to it. But overall, I think it's a very good hero. I think it's fallen off a tiny bit, but it's still very good.
Yeah, and just to add to that, the other thing that Kojo does have, it has probably one of the highest floors for many players. Very, very easy to get a 50-50 split without doing a single thing.
Yeah. It kind of sucks because Kojo genuinely is it's just a fun hero to play. I don't see it sliding out of A anytime soon. But that is with the current meta standing. Coming with set 5, set 6, there may be just stuff that just boosts other heroes past it. And it might get relegated to top of B. But I genuinely don't see it leaving S, A tier anytime soon.
Yeah, one thing we haven't seen as well is the amount of removal that now allows you to do nothing and basically get rid of a 1 or less cost character. So basically, what your strength was to be able to really get the Buddha to win a side now may no longer be the case.
Yeah.
I think another thing that we'll see that is a little bit of a challenge for Kojo early on into a metagame rather as well is the fact that so many of these play patterns are based on knowledge of what exactly your opponents are bringing, your expected metagame, that sort of thing. And that does make it a lot more complicated to figure out what the exact best Kojo configuration is for the moment where things are still very open in a lot of cases. So I do think that that's a challenge that a lot of the best Kojo players are currently trying to solve while leading up to Worlds, for example. But yeah, I would be surprised if they're not able to find out at least some very reasonably competitive lists at the top tier, even if maybe not the perfect one.
Yeah, and I think something that helps with that is that Kojo is less unique dependent. Kojo, along with Sigismar, they're just all around good heroes. They have no building restriction to them. Basira, you need boosts, or else you don't have a hero power. So you can you're a lot more versatile in what exactly you want, what style of deck you want.
Yeah.
Like you could make a Axiom Foundry Kojo deck. I don't think that's going to be the best version of the deck. I think it could be a fun version, but like you have more versatility with Kojo. And I want to go back to something Kelon said earlier about Basira, is that I think Basira allows more skill expression, and then has which I was very curious to see where Basira and Kojo would be, because I think a lot of people see them as S or A tier, and they're kind of interchangeable. One of them has to be S and one of them has to be A. I think I would definitely agree with this, that Basira has some higher skill expression, so can get some stronger plays done, and so should be an S, whereas Kojo has a bit more consistency overall for me. So is I think a better option for a player who's going into Conquest and saying, hey, I need a third deck. I don't have much practice on Bravos in general. I'll bring Kojo instead of Basira, because I don't know. At least that's how I feel. I feel like Kojo is much more approachable than Basira.
Yeah, and just to call on that one as well, you're only allowed to bring one character from every faction as part of this as well. So you had to make the choice.
Interesting. I missed that part. Yeah. Holy crap.
Yeah. So we'll have half of the factions represented by each player.
Yeah.
So we'll really see the lows. If no one brings anything, we're like, wow.
Yeah, you're just not going to see any of these in C and D just show up at Worlds at all.
No.
You
can't say no. You won't say no, because I think
they
like an Achati. I honestly feel if all of the marbles is going to play, and he plays Bravos, he will play Achati. Now,
I think we'll see some C tier heroes. I doubt we'll see D.
Yeah,
almost a guarantee there. All right, who we got next? We're moving on
Lyra.
to Lyra.
Okay. I am just going to go ahead and horribly admit that Fen is still an S tier hero.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I genuinely don't see Fen leaving S tier anytime soon.
Now, I'll say potentially an S tier hero with C tier results.
Yeah, we did see some better results from Fen towards the later part of the
basically
season.
Last 2 weeks. You're right.
Yeah, but was definitely the hero. A lot of people are saying, why is she not performing better? She seems very good on paper, but she just has not been getting results.
Yeah. And the main reason why I say this is because Fen is, and I'm not saying in terms of play style, but whenever I see a Fen deck, I have the same reaction that I do with a Sigismar deck, where I'm just like, crap, I have to play against this hero now. That is the same reaction. That being said, though, we'll talk about Sigismar later, but I think Fen either goes to the very bottom of S or, like, depending on how harsh you want to be, very top of A.
Yeah, because Chili was saying earlier only 2 S tier heroes, which is like, well, then where do some of these heroes that are very strong, are they bumped down to A, or are we saying that there's a very populated S tier?
It may be, and then like there's no hard rule on this, but I normally, when I look at it, is there are 1 to 2, maybe 3 decks that you are trying to beat. And that's the way I call the S tier. They are the ones you prepare for. They are the ones that if your decks cannot beat them, you're not going to do well in a tournament. Kelon Guy, do you have any thoughts on that, given you are also a tournament player, or more so a tournament player than me?
Personally, I probably would tentatively place Fen in mid A tier. I think the hero... Kojo. Yeah, that's probably where I'm at as well, just below Kojo. I think the hero is likely really good. I've been hearing that some of the more like the modern festival configurations of the deck seem particularly absurd. In which case, I could imagine it definitely, spiking an event, even maybe Worlds. Who knows? But I think it's just very good. If that makes sense. I think the only player who's had consistent success with the deck on such a extreme level has been Agite's Elwiwi, who is an incredible legend and plays more Fen than anyone else plays Altered in general. But otherwise, it's been, I'd say, a little bit of a rough road. It was interesting because I thought that Fen was actually held down by Aphanis in the previous metagame before the Aphanis changes a little bit, where it just seemed like what Fen really excelled at, Aphanis was getting a little bit more for free with less of the costs, I guess, that Fen had. But at this point, I agree that it's better than it used to be in that sense, but I just don't think it's going to quite reach S tier. I would be surprised if more players are registering that than a third deck other than the two that we already have listed in S at the moment.
Okay. I'm willing to relegate it to A, but I will relegate it above Kojo.
Sure.
I mean, I love Fen. Fen, I feel like is the hero I've performed best on. It's just like I don't know, and so I feel like I'm biased because of that. I would definitely put it above Navenka, especially in terms of overall decks. I think Navenka is much more. You have to have a much more tailored Navenka deck. Similar to Kojo, I think Fen is much more approachable by any newer player. Although it does kind of teach bad practices if you're picking, if it's the first deck you play, because then you don't think about mana decisions and stuff like that. But it is something that you don't need specific uniques or anything to perform well with. Obviously, some uniques are better than others, but it doesn't require any specific thing to perform well.
Yeah. I'll just put it this way, is that anytime I've ever seen a Fen deck play, the person who plays that Fen deck usually has been playing that deck for probably more than a year and has just been condensing and refining and perfecting the horrors that Fen can commit. So that's kind of why I put it there, because I think, and Awiwi is like a really good example, right? Awiwi probably has played Fen from the very beginning. And that's the same with, Nick, who, manages our local over here. He won granted there was only 5 people there, but his deck has beaten Sigismar decks. It's beaten Trace decks. It's beaten, some of the better decks that I've seen come out of our local scene. Just, and with nothing.
Yeah, there's lots of versatility as well, as especially if they have the festival build as part of what they do as well.
Yeah.
Especially a lot of people right now are moving out of it. Are you comfortable with it staying in A right now?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Like I said, as long as people admit that it at least belongs it's right on the margin. I'm fine with that.
All right, Muna. Well, since it seems like we're saving most of the new heroes for last, I'll go with Tasia. And I want to put Tasia bottom of A. Although I think that might be out of a necessity or a want to have Muna have some high-ranking hero. And most likely she belongs in higher B.
Yeah.
She can have incredibly powerful turns, mainly reliant on her top performing builds. I think are a bit reliant on uniques, especially either mass anchoring or the Loki uniques if you're trying to get rid of your opponent's card advantage. She can play well in a like normal meta without those, but at the top level she struggles a lot, especially because even if you have one of those eternal anchor setups, the hunger comes along and then you just can't do anything. And
I feel like there's not enough draw there to recur those uniques out of it again.
Yeah, and especially since she also has, if you do have a lot of anchoring, then you have less cards to play during your turn, which seems like a weird thing to complain about. It's like, oh, well, all my stuff just stays on the board. But it does mean that you have to pass and then give your opponent free reign to play around you. So she has a lot less card economy overall, unless she's really able to get those spindle harvesters and aloe veras to stay on the board for incredibly long. And a lot of her cards are weakest to almost all removal in the game, either through license withdrawal because they're boosted, their 3 hand costs are less for off you go. And if you don't have the spindle or something to protect them, then she loses twice as much value as any other hero.
Yeah, I know Nick put her in A, but I think she's more of a B tier hero. I don't think any of the Muna heroes are going to be competitively the first choice for most people, but I'll let you choose where you put it.
I don't know. I kind of want to hear Kelon's opinion first before I.
I'm a B advocate here. I don't think the hero is bad. I think that certain builds with really good uniques, as you were mentioning, can be still really absurd. But even those builds, I think that they were really good on preying on the fact that many factions and many heroes didn't have really good removal options. But I think over time, we've seen both more good removal options get printed in some cases, more incidental removal as well. So you're getting just to remove the main Tasia game plan while also developing further advantage yourself, or even decks like Trace just saying, I don't care, I'll just go over the top with an Anansi unique or something. Of course, it can be sometimes really hard to go over the top of some of these multiple unique configurations that Tasia can build. So I don't think it's a bad deck at all, but I would personally struggle to put it higher than top of B.
Yeah.
All right. Then that does take us to Orders. So down to just last 8 heroes now.
Alrighty. Fun facts. I think Sigismar is getting relegated to A tier.
Sure.
Now.
Wow. That hurts a little bit.
No. I know it does. But here's the reason why. Is because I believe that if people know that they're going to be playing against Sigismar decks, they're specifically going to be playing stuff that can wipe out his tokens.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think so, Trey? Ooh, okay. You don't think that it's worth it?
I think part of the problem is that token is just so free. It's not like when you play against Kojo, where that token only comes every second day and it's a little bit larger as well. This is such a free, persistent threat that works and synergizes with virtually every other card. It's like a must remove that you're never allowed to, even when it is incidental removal. If it's a card, what's the new one? Caladrius, for example, that just removes something for free. They'll literally say, oh, cool, you played a Caladrius. I'll play an Ortis Trooper on top of it, another 2-cost play, double advance, and then the next card they'll play will be card draw, and then you lose the game like on the spot. This hero, I think this hero is ridiculous. I think that the reason why I think it's so absurd is that it single-handedly holds an entire faction at like arm's length beneath it, which would be the Izmir faction. Sigismar is so ridiculously oppressive into any removal-based faction. Izmir needs good removal in order to win. Turns out when your removal is really bad, then you don't win. Personally, I think that and I think that the other dynamic here is that, especially going into Worlds, where I'm expecting to see like Worlds competitors bringing this deck, this is going to be the most absurd uniques in the game. The uniques that we see out of Sigismar are uniquely busted because of that. Again, we've been touching on it again and again. Restrictions don't count for Sigismar, but they do count because when there's a restriction on your unique, you get better effects and better stats. So you'll see restrictions like controlling 3 or more characters, which the character you play, the unique is 1. You already have the token, so just play one other card. It's really easy. It's really free. You'll see things where when you control a token, well, that's free. And then sometimes you'll see exactly how, and then you'll see. So then you'll see a combination of those two effects, and then suddenly you're getting stats on the thing that draws you a card and removes something, or like there's any number of ridiculous effects. There's token spammers that draw cards. I think you're likely to see any or all of those out of these Worlds competitors. I think that deck is really likely to be banned in Conquest format because of how absurd those uniques are specifically. I think Sigismar is the best deck in the game, but I'm also
let
willing
me-
to say if you want to put it a little bit further down, I'm not going to cry.
So
No, look, I want an end to the Sigismar reign. I want it to end today. I want that card. Just
yeah, and I'll say one thing, Nick, and just based on what you said is like people prepare for Sigismar. That automatically tells you that's S tier. People prepare for Trace. That tells you it's an S tier.
But I don't want to admit
Basira, I don't think people prepare for Basira, but its performance shows that it's up there. Either bottom of S in this case or top of A, but I don't mind where it is. That's the way I think of meta. The meta is defined by both Sigismar and by Trace, in my mind.
You know when you're watching American football and someone like breaks away with the ball and then they start doing that thing where they're like there's a defender who's maybe a little bit faster, even a little bit more nimble, who's running up to get them, and Sigismar is the guy who's running with the ball, trying to get the touchdown, just stiff arming the guy away, and there's people just falling behind him, collapsing over one another as they all try to run up. Maybe he's not quite as bulky as the others, maybe he's not quite as fast as the defender, but they still can't touch him. He's real strong.
I hate it.
I think
Look,
also,
I don't want to admit it.
I think he suffers a bit from how accessible he is. So a lot of people bring him, and if we're talking again about worlds, then like these are people who have like was it Caladrius? Or I forget. No, that's the bird name.
Yeah, that's the bird.
Claudius.
Yep.
Like he almost exclusively plays Sigismar. You go up against him, I mean, you can ban his Sigismar, and I would. Which would be a shame to see like someone who's an absolute incredible player of the deck not be able to play the deck. But I would be afraid as the opponent. So a lot of people bring him when they don't necessarily know how to play him well. And also because he is so open, you can build him in so many ways. People build the deck in weird ways that doesn't necessarily function well, as opposed to having a more refined list.
A guy trying. I know you're a stats guy in general, and I think Sigismar is one of these really funny examples where stats are really awesome to have and don't matter at all sometimes.
Yeah.
Because of exactly that dynamic you're touching on. Someone who's really new to the game, super likely to bring Sigismar, and then you'll see there's a ton of Sigismars in the event. They all get crushed, and it has the worst conversion rate out of any of the heroes into the tops. But the Sigismar who is there in the tops, Claudius, Popeye, any number of these players who are so incredibly good, have super sweet uniques with it, have so many reps and really well familiarized deck lists and everything. They're so good, and it gives you a very different impression compared to just looking at overall play numbers and then overall win rates, I would say.
I'll go off on just a very quick tangent about like statistics are only as valuable as you are able to perceive them. There was a meta in Pokemon, the video game, not the TCG, where Tauros was 50% of the meta, but it's because it was on every team. And so it won as much as it lost because it was on both sides of the field.
Yeah.
You look at that and you're like, Tauros is awful. Why would anyone play this? It's a 50%, whereas this has 60%. It's because it was so good it had to be on every team. And so stats aren't always the whole picture. You have to be able to interpret them well.
Yeah. Like I hate admitting the fact that Sigismar just still is at the top, and I want somebody to dethrone him. I don't care who does it at this point. If it was Muna, I would cry because that's hilarious.
Yeah, so at the end of the week, we're going to find out who dethrones and who gets the first world's championship.
Yeah, that's true. So I wanted to hope and see that everybody might agree that there's some stuff coming out with set 4 that might help dethrone Sigismar.
I actually
guess
think
we're gonna
he
find
got
out.
stronger. He got stronger with the
send.
With the send dynamic. That's my view. And I think I believe almost every competitor is going to bring a Sigismar deck.
Yeah, and I think again, I hate that fact.
Yeah, unless I know some people like Ghoulrang is a big pet deck for people. People who love Ghoulrang. So I do think that there are some people who might bring Ghoulrang as they feel like they can perform well with it. I don't think that's necessarily the right call for them to do on the world stage unless they can pilot it very well. Sigismar is the easy bet. and I think he's going to take up the lion's share of Ortis decks, but we will see some people who are trying to go against that if they bring Ortis.
Yeah.
And just one thing from Freeloader, he basically says that there is a carry deck that counters Siggy at the moment, and that is true. But that carry deck, how does it do against the rest of the field? That's the other part to consider. All right, let's see if we can wrap up within the next 20 or so minutes. That would be lovely for us all.
I gotta dip real fast.
So I think, Nick, you're the one that keeps on extending the talk.
It's not my fault.
No, it's definitely me. It's definitely me.
I was gonna say the guys over here are talking a lot.
The guys are talking too.
I have to shout out all these players for all these decks.
That's true.
It's good. It's great. It's actually, I appreciate you doing that, Kelon guy. Just the chance to appreciate so many great players that have mastered the art of this game.
All right, we're gonna do the second to last Izmir, and then we're just gonna rapid fire all the last heroes.
Cool. Lindaway. Lindaway. As long as Sierra is on the right side of Lindaway, or I'm sorry, below Lindaway, I'm happy with any other placement you want to make there. But Sierra, I do believe, is below Lindaway. Mm-hmm. I think that Lindaway has some weaknesses that are typical of Izmir heroes in general. What I would say is that probably the two best players who play Lindaway have really, really consistent undefeated finishes in serious events with it. And that gives me a lot of faith overall for the archetype. It's incredibly skill testing, both to play against Lindaway, but as a Lindaway player, you have to think about so many variables. You need to be able to read the game state really well, figure out when you're supposed to be the aggressor versus defending, when you're supposed to be representing stats that will line up on a certain side versus a different side, whether you're trying to set up a Moth Lantern in one turn or trying to push for advantage. Being able to read those game states it's very difficult for a new player to pick up Lindaway and have success with it. But if you are one of those players that's very familiar with it, I think you can consistently do really well with the hero still. So yeah, that would be from Team ALR. Zoa, incredible Lindaway player. From Team Altered Aces, Wesh, they're both amazing. I know there's a couple other Lindaways out there, but it's really those two that I keep seeing the most often in the tops of standings with the hero. Yeah, so for me, I think B's pretty okay. I do think it's just better than Sierra overall, but yeah.
And I'll say Zoa's builds are amazing. Like he's consistent from the get go, really. I honestly feel this hero is still untapped in terms of its potential. It performs despite Equinox seldom doing cards that actually help it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Although it did get a number of new sacrifice options, sacrifice cards in the latest set.
True.
I do think it also. We got some more token hate in the latest set, which I think might hurt Lindaway. And then also at the end of last season, we saw a bit more of a bit more play of Sap Duende, specifically like in Fen, which does hurt Lindaway a bit. My main thing is I feel like when Lindaway's on, she's on. And then if you don't draw any of your sacrifice outlets, she just can't perform. Because her stats, like I played a couple games with her where it's like I only drew like Moonlight Jellyfish. And I was just like, I can't do anything. Like my so I think she's a bit feast and famine about and so she has some consistency issues. That's my main issue with Lindaway.
Cool.
Yeah. All right, last round. We're on the last round. So I'm assuming now it's Izuri.
Yep. Izuri, I think Izuri is a really interesting hero. I don't think she has a bit more access to board interaction, or is more inclined to play board interaction than Traced is. But Traced, I think, is an overall better hero. I would put Izuri probably in B, towards middle end of B. I think overall Izuri is going to perform better than Sierra, because she just has access to a lot of she can get access to a lot of resupply and see a lot of her deck. I don't think she has anything crazy that she does outside of maybe super Anansi turns that I know some people are trying to do, but that feels like one turn out of many. And so she has in that build, she has one strong turn as opposed to playing a better game overall. I think the more consistent version lands her towards the end of B.
I think B is acceptable. I really like what Izuri does, and I think that underneath Traced, I think Izuri has the potential to be the best Axiom hero.
Yeah, and I would say with the current setup, I'd probably knock Sierra down to C. Just like with the current layout.
So put her just in front of a chart E and C.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable. I don't really know much of anything about Isuri. Could be really good hero. Could be just, I don't know, above Subash. I don't know. I think Traced will be better probably always, but maybe not. Who knows? Maybe there's something really busted out there that we haven't seen yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this hero is really made to take advantage of all the sacrifice uniques that came out in set 1 that have never really had a chance. So, but I still think, why would you test that over? Why would you take B class when you can just play Traced?
Yeah, and one thing I want to note is that she has trouble playing some of the cards that make Trace so powerful, like Amelia Earhart or Dr. Frankenstein, because she's not as reliable about getting specific cards into her reserve, because she does a lot of resupply. She doesn't have... So if you draw your Dr. Frankenstein, that just feels bad to actually play it. For 4 for a 3/3 that has no ability. So she doesn't have access to those cheaper power cards from reserve as reliably. So they can kind of clunk up your deck.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Bravos.
Bravos. Next is Soul and Halua. This one, it was funny because my initial reaction was to put it in Gen tier. However, I did notice one for so far. Soul is the new hero from Skybound Odyssey that has the most results thus far for events over the first, week and a half or whatever of playing events with it. And did seem sort of reasonable. I was going to say that I think the deck seems very much not figured out. A player that I noted down earlier when I was looking through, who I think was getting closer to a coherent list for the deck, was Bajulia, who had a really sweet setup with some Phileas Fog uniques, which I thought was really cool. And then, of course, as I'm writing all this down, he then also wins the AWOL today, in addition to Flol, who I was mentioning earlier on Basira. So I think that this version of Soul has a lot of untapped potential still. I think that's going to be the theme for these new heroes thus far. But I guess seeing that it is both still sort of outperforming the other new heroes, and given that it had just a really good result with some really sweet gameplay, doing something that other decks just don't do, I would love to put that like middle of B tier. And yeah.
Yeah, I think Soul's going to be fantastic. And the Colorful Cuckoo is just an amazing card for them. Actually, great across all the heroes there.
I put it right here. Honestly, I think Soul is going to be frustrating because there's not much you can do.
I do think Soul also it is a bit more straightforward of a deck. Yes, it's not as refined, but I feel like you want access to a lot of rush and you want finishers as well. So some cheap 1-cost cards or scouts. So it's not as complicated as some of these other heroes. So I do think we'll have more early meta success than the other heroes. And then some of the other heroes I think will catch up as their decks are more refined. But I do think I do think Soul is a very good hero.
Yeah, I actually think there's going to be someone that brings Soul to Worlds.
Yeah, I would be surprised if you did not see one. So I love Soul. I went up against a Soul deck, and it was frustrating to behold. Like, it's so annoying because there's almost no reason why they're not always passing first. Almost no reason.
Yeah, especially in the way that we play Altered overall. She's so antithetical to it. The whole, most decks are trying to pass as often as they can and then play their power cards. So most decks are incentivized to let her pass first. And then if you try to pass first against her, you're putting yourself into an awkward position. So it's a win-win for the Soul player.
Yeah, there's a couple of cards that I think are going to be really interesting as well. Beowulf as part of that build. I know it's not one that Bajulien is using, but I really like the potential that's there. There's lots of upside, but it's also early days in exploration.
Yeah. All right. We're just going to move right along then. Into Lyra, right? I have an alphabet in my head. I know that Nadir is B tier, but I very much think that it has the potential to be A. I don't know if everybody agrees with me on that, but just the amount of control that you can have with Nadir is hilarious to me. So I don't know what everybody else thinks, but those are my thoughts. That's why I haven't put it anywhere yet.
I love Nadir.
I
will
love
say, Nadir to me is the hero. I've been trying out all the new heroes, and Nadir has been the one I felt I've had the most success on. I feel like I would personally put Nadir in A tier just because I feel like I've been performing well with Nadir. I think overall Nadir is probably a B tier hero. I think he's incredibly skill intensive. You really have to know what your opponent's trying to do and what you're trying to do in order to correctly map out the entire like what regions you're placing markers on. So it'll be difficult for someone to just pick up Nadir and run with it. But God, it's so much fun. And Nadir mirrors are some of the most interesting matches I have played. Because you have markers on top of markers, and then you're moving markers from one to the other. And the order in which you stack markers matters. So it's really it's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Nadir is gonna be like the 4D chess of Altered. So I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts real quick?
I know nothing about Nadir whatsoever. Haven't really seen him. I think he's super cool. I love the design. I love the terrains or like region types matter sort of effect in general. Really trying to maximize on the fact that Lyra does have really strong spike stats. But again, I haven't really seen much of anything thus far. I could imagine it being good. I could imagine it being terrible. I don't really have any idea. Totally fine to defer to you guys' judgment.
Oh, yeah, trust me. It is definitely both. It can suck and it can rule.
So I actually would put Nadir probably towards the top of B tier because it's still unproven in terms of results. I do think that they do something that no other hero does in that they have got a lot of cards that the moment you lay out your foundation of moving the single terrain tracks, that actually get a lot of boosts for very good value. So you get that out early, then all your late game play is actually even stronger. Especially if you start having those the nymphs around, because then you can bring them back and use them multiple times. I really love it. I think people are not going to be prepared to play against them very well because your game plan is destroyed the moment they start playing.
I also think Nadir has a good Sigismund matchup. At least that's been my experience so far. Because you have like Bliss Basist and Mountain Guide as cheap 2 spike stats, and then you can easily just put the like starting region as mountain or water and force your opponent to overcommit to that side. And then so there's a lot because you can try and keep moving the single regions and you have the spike stats, as Kelon was saying, the 1/1/1 token gets less value overall against your lower cost spike stats. But this is after just a week and a half of testing. We'll see how it actually pans out. But I would say I think I would not be surprised if eventually Nadir was an A. I have trouble putting him above B right now. In the early meta.
I genuinely want to put him above Taya, but Taya has so much more data and has so much more there's so much more play going for Taya that I think I have to put it beneath. I think I have to put Nadir below Taya.
Yeah. Well, when we do this at the end of the season, we'll get a chance to see how well we've performed.
We'll have to screenshot this too.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah. All right. Next, Muna. Let's go. We got 5 minutes.
Okay, Kaori. I think Kaori has high highs, low lows. She turns your opponent into Sigismar sometimes, and if you don't have the cards to combat it, then you just get overrun. If you do have the cards to combat it, she feels very good. Personally, that makes me like C tier because to me, C feels like I have consistency issues. But she gets so much she gets a lot of card draw and has access to a lot of stuff that I can easily see her rising above that. But my first, she's such a weird hero. I think she's really cool, but I have trouble right now putting her above C overall. But I think she has some very good matchups and some very bad matchups.
I think Kaori goes right there in the middle of C.
I feel like I'm just gambling here. Don't really know much. I do feel like somehow that she's going to end up better than Nadir, actually, but I don't know what that configuration will look like even.
I could see that. I think she's going to be a deck that really has to be like well refined, and that's one of the things when we're playing when everyone was playing the demo deck tournament. I was like, this deck is not what Kaori is going to look like. Do not take this as like a list that like. And I think a lot of people, she's her and Nadir, I think, are heroes that will have to have their build really refined before they see meta results.
Yeah, so one thing for me that I use, the one that I've had the most success with, is making her a ramp deck, similar to Achati, because like you're getting the cards, you might as well get the ramp alongside it. And that's seen some success for me, but it's not what I've seen be played outside of what I did.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm very curious to see this the deck that Freeloader mentioned though. That is just a counter to Siggy. I can understand it, but I definitely want to see it.
Yeah. All right. I think this is a good placement. If anybody disagrees, too bad. I'm putting Goring right here at the very end of B. I think Kelon or not Kelon. I think Matt had it right on the money. I think Golrang, the people who bring Golrang, they're bringing the deck that is like their pet deck that they have, kind of like me. I'm not going to lie. If I were going to go to Worlds, I would refine it just a little bit more to have a lot more draw mechanics and to have those uniques that let me draw off of it. But the people who have done that are going to be taking Golrang, as a pet deck because they're familiar with it. It's the people who don't play Sigismar. It's the people who don't play Zen and Zephyr. And it's the people who just have so many play hours with Golrang. So I think
I'm down to argue here. And my thought process is Golrang looks really, really good on paper and has a lot of really strong things that the deck can do, especially with uniques as well, even interestingly enough. The problem is I think it's a terrible choice to bring to an event like Worlds, because this deck just completely dies to hunger in a way that makes it like you feel horrible showing up and having to ban your hunger deck of your opponents in Conquest or anything like that. And that's not to say you then get a free win against their other decks or whatnot. You still have to fight some pretty tough matchups, even if they're not hunger decks. I don't love it. I would personally struggle to put it above Atsadi. But I think the deck overall is still very powerful. It does have those good like on paper numbers and everything. And I think that is worth something still. But the fact that it does die to hunger so badly really worries me for the hero overall.
Yeah, I feel like I would put it similar into the same category of Achati and Sierra, where it's like these slower decks that can really struggle to have a foothold in the meta. And will struggle because of that. Again, especially because the hunger is so rampant. I mean, 2 of our top 6 heroes are Bravos, and both of them run the hunger very well. So, and even against like Trace has the Grems, which just nom, or the rare Grems. They're running like 1 or 2 ofs. Just get rid of that Mesiktet and hook all of your tokens to one side and just win with a thing. They struggle, and we are seeing a bit more token hate. We got more token hate. I don't know if we'll see it in the meta, but I think she can have some very rough matchups, unfortunately.
Yeah, and this is me being kind to Goring after all of the pain that I've suffered with it. So the main reason why I say, excuse me, the main reason why I said B was because of Belteshazzar's. Like, he really showed what Goring can do, and that's why I'm thinking that if people bring Goring to Worlds, it's gonna be like Belteshazzar's deck.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
that takes us to the last deck, though. So if we're going through, where do we
Kelon,
see
which
Moyo?
which are you gonna choose?
Yeah, tell
good
me what you
question.
think about Moyo.
So Moyo's real good.
I agree.
So unlike Akesha here, who I think had to be relegated to B, despite how strong the hostage strategy is specifically, because of how the more popular version of Akesha is probably a little bit worse, I think, even. Moyo doesn't have that problem because I don't think there's any viable version of Moyo that isn't hostage, really. However, this hostage Moyo thing is truly absurd, and I need to explain this in like two parts, right? I'm going to put Moyo at the bottom of A. The reason why I'll
agree.
do this is that I think that Moyo has multiple excellent matchups, even above it in this current tier list, including decks like Traced, where you have a nearly unlosable matchup against.
Wow.
The problem is, Sigismar matchup's really bad. You actually have to fight a pretty even matchup against Kojo, in my experience. You're favored into Basira, but that's also one you really have to fight it out. But virtually every other deck, you are like 75% plus favored against when you're playing a hostage strategy, with the exception of Lyra Festival and like unfair decks in that end. Lyra Festival does prove to be a little bit of a problem there. Virtually anything else, any late game deck, you win by default. They cannot beat you. There's no world that they can beat you. Any deck that isn't aggressive enough just doesn't have a clock to beat you. At that point, I would actually push it higher towards the top part of A. The problem here is that this is a deck that I get a lot of players on BGA ranting at me again and again, telling me that this deck does not work in real life. The round clock thing really helps on BGA. The secret here is that you can actually win the game very quickly as far as your own time is concerned once you get to 14 mana. If you play quickly until then, all you have to do is literally every single day, you play Small Step, Giant Leap, you play Celebration Day, you shuffle those two cards back into your deck, you draw two cards at the next day, Small Step, Celebration Day, rinse and repeat. Yep. So all you have to do, you have to make like 14 total actions in order to win the game then at that point, and you just sit there, you quickly do that, that's it. Problem is, you also have to tell your opponent, like, please play faster, because nothing they do at that stage of the game matters, and nothing they do matters at that stage. But if they sit there and think about decisions that don't matter for a while, you're going to run into this sort of tie-break issue. So you have to be very quick when you're playing a deck like this. It wins this late game, like guaranteed, but it is very slow. You need to probably even tell a judge before the event, like, I'm playing a deck that wins guaranteed in the late game, but my opponents are going to have a tendency to slow play then. Could you please just have an eye on the table if it's getting late in the round to be able to pick up the pace of someone if they're slowing down when there's nothing else that matters in the game anymore. And for that reason, I do think it might struggle a little bit in real life play, but I can also say all of those people who keep criticizing it on BGA for being unable to win in real life, they play 3 times slower than every hostage player that I see playing this deck on BGA. I have statistics to prove that. Deck's really, really good. So yeah, I could actually imagine, I think that it might be a sleeper pick for some of the people who are really looking to metagame into Worlds, especially knowing they could ban Sigismar in the Conquest format. That's the worst matchup gone. And from there, I think you have 50% or better matchups exclusively, and Traced is like a free win, and that's one of the best decks in the game. So I think that's a really good position for the deck.
Kelon guy, the other thing I'd probably say with this deck, unlike Akesha, it has the ability of actually adding stats while you're removing other stats. So you're bringing stats for you while you remove other people. But you have to early on be able to get the close to 1-to-1 as much as possible. So that slows them down. I think it's really useful. I think there are other viable options as that we haven't explored yet, but out of anyone doing hostage, this is probably the best chance of winning through hostage. A tier seems high, but at the same time, there's no other Izmir hero in the A tier right now. I see this as the
yeah.
strongest of all the heroes within Izmir personally as well.
The problem is just looking down from it, I struggle to find any matchups that I don't feel like I would win, like, I don't know, 8 out of 10 times playing against them. Again, only exception being festival decks there. I feel like Tasia's near unlosable. Nadir, I haven't seen the list aggressive enough to contest in time. Soul also ends up being a little bit slow because of the reliance on playing just a single overstated character so many days, and they need to double progress, so that's not enough. Akesha is a slow deck itself, it can't win. Aurak, typically the good versions of Aurak are resupply piles. It's combo. You're actually really good into that style of combo because when they set up their ideal game state of make infinite stats every day, you just say celebration day, celebration day, celebration day. It's fine. Afanas, you're pretty favored into. They're a removal deck. You don't play anything that's worth removing. Isuri, haven't really seen anything work there. Lindaway can be actually a little bit more aggressive there, but even then, I feel like all of those lower tier decks are really going to struggle to beat it. Maybe they can stall it to time and then try to win some tiebreaker thing based on time in the round, but I'm not convinced. I think Moyo is so good.
Yeah,
right.
I like Moyo a lot. So, all right, I'm going to just call it right there. We have had a lot of fun doing this, I think. Nobody died. Nobody, no friendships were ruined, I think. I think everybody came out with like most of their limbs and fingers attached. So everybody, thank you so much for watching this. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens at Worlds. I think
we don't need to see. We already know. We have it right there.
Well, that's
guaranteed.
All
Yeah,
right.
all 32 competitors registered those top 3 decks: Sigismar, Basira, and Trace. Right? That's it.
Yeah,
There will
and
be
maybe,
people who do
maybe a sprinkle of Kojo in there. But thank you very much,
Yeah.
Kelon. Thank you very much, the guys, Kelon guy and a guy trying. Appreciate you having you guys on. I know this. We scheduled for an hour. We took 2. So our time management skills are really, really good right now. I appreciate it. This is interesting. I actually think I'd love to hear. I would love to hear the comments from people in the community as we, as they differ from us, but also as game develops, there's things are going to change for us. And in 5 to 6 weeks' time, we're going to have an errata of some kind. And how will that then spice it up yet again?
Yeah. So everybody, thank you so much for listening. Chili, you said you have a little parting shot.
Yes. No. That's it. I do need to go make dinner.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me too.
Cool. Everybody,
Thank you.
We'll see you at Worlds. Well, I know we're not going to be at Worlds, but we'll see everybody watching Worlds. So yeah,
You can find me there. You can find me there.
Yeah. We'll have Kelon guy. We'll have Cole as our correspondents. So keep an eye
I
out for
don't think
those.
we want Cole.
Well, depending on his rates. So,
Sure.
But everybody, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching, tuning into the live stream, and we'll see you on the next one.
Hasta luego.
Ciao.